Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about should anyone's social circumstances, whether they live in a poor household, a well-to-do household, a crime-ridden family or a non-crime-ridden family, the circumstances of their upbringing and their neighbourhood and so on, should that determine to the extent to which they're accountable before the law, and accountability is the extent of their punishment, for example. Should they be arrested, and should there be a trial, and so on. So that's the if you like, the wider arc of this essay. Now, should just having a look at social circumstances as a case in point. Now, the leftist legal practitioners argue that as minorities come from poorer backgrounds than the average white person, that they should therefore be less accountable because they've had a rougher life. They haven't learnt the values of others, and therefore they should have a different level of accountability. They should get a lesser prison sentence or no prison sentence, or a lesser fine or no fine. They should be let out on no bail or a very low bail, and these types of things. And because they come from an ideologically determined or predetermined victim class, then legally the matter is already prejudicial, because they're predetermined to be disadvantaged, and then also predetermined that they must be cut more slack than someone else would be. But so let's look at that a little bit more widely. Now, I'll go back to high school. Now, this is an upper middle class sort of high school here. So pretty much everyone there, with a few exceptions, everyone there's got sort of money behind them, or enough. Everyone's got very smart, clean uniforms and shiny shoes, that type of thing. And kids, when they turned 17, they were given brand new cars that were quite expensive. Some even got brand new Mercs, but that was a bit over the top. But there was one case. I think it was in I can't remember what year it was, but there was a girl whose parents were going through a very difficult divorce, and she was, as I think back now, she was quite sort of a gentle soul, really, and didn't cope too well at this drama in the house, and so she kind of just didn't cope with it. You could see her almost crumbling under the stress of it all and the pressure of it all, and it was quite sad. But when it came to, I mean, she wasn't a top student or anything, but when it came to exam time, she did quite badly. Came in the bottom, sort of thing. So clearly she was affected by it. Now, the leftists today would argue that well, she was white, so I guess it may not apply to her, but the leftists today would argue, well, given her difficult circumstances and others didn't have those same difficult circumstances, we should give her a pass in the exams because of those difficulties. We should be sensitive to her domestic situation and give her a leave pass because of that. Now, you can kind of see the reasoning for it, and it's not wholly out of bounds. Here's a student that was doing okay. She wasn't a top student, was doing okay, and because of a one-off event that it affected her, it clearly did. And I had to be a bit older at the time. I didn't sort of think a whole lot about it, but years later, when sort of I looked back, I could see it maybe even more clearly than I could at the time, or with more experience and thus greater clarity. So should someone like that be cut some slack, and given it was a one-off? And there is an argument for that, and I do understand it. Now, let's extend that argument out and say, well, these, say in a black community where the mother's got 6 children by 6 different men before she's 30, has always lived on welfare, and has got an IQ of 80 and lives in a neighbourhood that's super high crimes of all descriptions, whether it be car theft, break and enter, assault and battery, you name it, it's going on in this place. So that she lives day to day with this sort of thing. Men come in and out of her life and go, and it's always constant drama and carry on. The children are exposed to all this thing. Gangs sort of run the neighbourhood. The kids are with the gangs, and so the whole thing's a disaster. So one should all those kids be given, simply because of the difficult circumstances, should they be given free university degrees, free high school graduation? Should they be given cosy jobs, well-paid jobs? Exactly how much do you give them if they commit crimes? You say, well, your circumstances are rather unfortunate, so we're going to say the crime wasn't really a crime. But if a white person committed that same crime, no, you're responsible. You have to be responsible, and so this dividing the society up into the totem pole of those who have social power must be accountable. Those who have lesser social power or no social power, depending on how the totem pole is structured. This is all ideological, of course. Then the people with no social power should have no accountability, or so little accountability, it doesn't matter. And you can see this in the DAs that George Soros is funding, the Chaser Boudins and all that sort of thing. They have a view that people from difficult or straitened circumstances should not be accountable, or should be much less accountable than anyone else. So again, it's around this social power concept. People who don't have social power cannot be racist to those who do, is the argument, which of course is an utter absurdity, but racism can come from anywhere and all forms. I've done a lot of traveling all around the world on business, and I can assure you, white people are the least racist by far. And that's from someone who's again been traveling for well over 10 years across the world. So anyway, this is the take now. Should somebody does that work? Does it work to not have people who are not accountable before the law just because they had a rough childhood, for example? Now, one thing I have noticed is accountability with people who really have no concept of what private property means. One of the biggest problems, I think, challenges with the black community in the United States, they still have that African tribal village attitude to things, that everything should be communally owned, which is why the Soviet agitators targeted black people, because they were particularly prone to the communist message because of that. So if they have this view of communal ownership, then they can't accept responsibility in the same way, particularly with crimes against property or people. They can't accept responsibility for adhering to the laws in the same way as other people would, say white people would. So I don't know if accountability works. Blacks have been made very accountable in terms of going to prison for the more minor crimes or more serious misdemeanors, and it doesn't appear to achieve a great deal. That they seem to just repeat offend and go back to prison. So is the answer to say, well, let's just not put them in prison no matter what they do, or only if it's a serious capital crime should we charge them and put them in prison? Because once the black community realises they're going to be arrested for, say, organised shoplifting and that sort of thing, going into jewellery stores, smashing it up and running off there, once they realise that, then they'll do it. So they're only respecting the power of punishment, and also other things I've noticed, that when a black person's pulled up for a crime, they'll try and run away from the police officer or fight the police officer or those sorts of things, which is why there's struggles and shootings and so on. Nothing to do with racism. So I don't know if it's possible to have, because it's been hundreds of years now, how possible to have a community that has those attitudes or where the majority of them have those attitudes, and also have a special justice system on the side for them and them alone, or non-whites and people with less power on the ideological totem pole. So does that really work to have multiple systems, and when will people respond? I mean, if it works, why not? I mean, gee whiz, if black people commit fewer crimes with these attitudes that they're victims and therefore shouldn't be accountable, if they commit fewer crimes as a result of it, then it's good. It works. Hey, I'm all for it. But if it only leads to more crime and more severe crime, and as we're seeing in places like San Francisco, mass gangs doing organised robberies, while the police and security people stand by and do nothing, and the district attorney's office can't be bothered to prosecute or just give some good behaviour bonds, that sort of thing, then I don't know if that's really going to work. People should be equal before the law, and maybe people's circumstances should be considered in some way. But does it mean that they should be allowed to commit crimes without a punishment? What's the cause of the crime? If the cause of the crime is for example, say poverty, then why is that so? Is it because they have low IQ, they couldn't be bothered at school, they're lazy? Is it because the whole black community is just made that way, and it just produces and creates these sort of people no matter what? In which case, disperse the black people throughout the whole country. Don't let them gather in suburbs or groups. Sprinkle them out around so that they're more likely to take on the habits of the white people around them than the criminal habits of the career criminal blacks that are around them in the current situation. So there are other things that could be done, but is the non-equality before the law working? I would say no. I would say it's been a total failure. If there's just a one-off instance of like the girl I mentioned with is going through a difficult time with a family at school, maybe there is an argument to say, well, this is just a one-off, and that the overall trend for that student was that they would have passed. So let's cut them some slack there. I can kind of appreciate that and do understand it. But in the case of just letting career criminals off on the basis that somehow sociologically, ideologically, social power, all that sort of mishmash of bullshit crap, that's somehow going to change things or make things better, then it obviously isn't and hasn't and won't. And that's something that we need to accept and realise and say, look, we need another way to deal with this. The objective is to stop crime. That's the objective. Now, how we go about it, that's up for debate. But the way of just letting career criminals back on the street, that's clearly not working, and we need to find a better way. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.